Hello and good morning dear students. Welcome back to the online class. In today's class, we are starting a new chapter, that is chapter number 10, and the name of the chapter is direct and inverse variations. Okay, what type of variations? One is direct and then the other one is inverse variation. How does it vary? One value to other value, how does it vary? Okay, so we are going to learn about variations. Do you know what I mean by variations? Variations we actually come across in our day-to-day life. Okay, for example, if I say if the cost, okay, if the cost of one pen is rupees 10, then what will be the cost of 5 pen? What will be the cost of 5 pen? Cost of 1 pen is 10, then the cost of 5 pen, will it be more than 10 or less than 10? Obviously more than 10. And how much more? How? 5 into 10, which is 50. What I did out here is, I have used the variation out here. Cost of 1 pen is 10, then cost of 5 pen will be more than 10. Am I clear or not? This is actually one type of variation. And what kind of variation? This is actually my direct variation. Okay, if one value increases from one to other value, then the price also increase. Okay, increase in one affect the increase in other. So this type of variation is actually called what variation? Direct variation. Okay, and if the other one, if I take, if the increase in other makes decrease in the other variation or other value, then that variation will be known as what variation? Inverse variation. Okay, this is one example of direct variation. The cost of 1 pen is 10, then the cost of 5 pen will be 50. So can you see the change out here? 1 changes from 1 to 5 and 10. The value was previously 10, it is now increased to 50. Okay, so this value has increased. Similarly, here also there is a increase. Okay, so this is actually what variation? Direct variation. There are many examples if you can take. Okay, suppose if I say, this is a common example I am giving you. Okay, you are doing a revision. Suppose if in 1 hour you can finish 3 chapters. If in 1 hour revising you can finish 3 chapters, then can you tell me in 2 hours how many chapters you will be able to finish? Obviously in 2 chapters how many? Sorry, in 2 hours how many chapters? 2 into 3, 6 chapters you will be able to finish, isn't it or not? You guess and tell me. In 1 hour you are doing the revision work. In 1 hour you can finish 3 chapters. Then in 2 hours how many chapters you will finish? Obviously more than 3, 6 chapters. Okay, so we can also see out here, if the value increase from one to other, is there change in the other value? Obviously there is a change. Okay, so increase in one makes changes increase in other. This type of variation is called what variation? Direct variation. Am I clear? Okay, now just the opposite, increase in other makes what? Decrease in the other value, and that variation will be known as what variation? Inverse variation. Okay, I'll come to that as well. For time being, please note this down. Alright, now let's move to other variation, that is inverse variation. So in inverse variation, what happens? One increases, the other decreases. That will be ulta. Okay, so example, inverse variation, you take a small example. Okay, if you are walking at a speed of 5 km per hour, you are walking at a speed of 5 km per hour, you are not running, you are just simply walking at a 5 km per hour speed. You can complete a distance of suppose say 10 km in how much hours? In 10 hours. Okay, suppose you are walking from Kurseong to Sonada. Am I clear? You are walking at a speed of 5 km per hour. Okay, how much time you are taking? 10 hours to reach Sonada at a speed of 5 km per hour. Slowly. Okay, if I increase, if the other person is walking at 10 km per hour and he is also walking from Kurseong to Sonada, okay, you can see the speed has been increased. 5 kilometer per hour speed will take 10 hours, but 10 kilometer per hour speed will obviously take less than 10 hours. It will take exactly half, which is 5 hours, isn't it or not? So here the value is increased, but here the value has what? Decreased, isn't it or not? Okay, this type of variation is called what variation? Inverse variation. Direct variation, one increases, other also increase. Inverse variation, one increases, other decrease. Okay, so these are the two types of variation that we will be learning in this chapter. Okay, now I'll take the same example and we'll now make the formulas. This one is your direct variation and then the other one is your inverse variation. One thing we should be always knowing is that in direct variation, the ratio will always be equal. The ratio will be equal. Now, which ratio I am talking about? The ratio of this by this should always be equal to the ratio of this by this. Okay, that is 1 by 5. 1 divided by 5 is always equals to 10 divided by 50. You can cancel out here, 10 ones are 10 fives are, so I will be getting 1 by 5 is always equals to 1 by 5. So if you are to check whether it is direct variation or not, then we have to check the ratio. This by this should always be equals to this by this. Okay, so that's why the ratio will always be equal. Okay, now when it comes to inverse variation, in inverse, not the ratio, but this time it will be the product. This into this will always be equal to this into this. So here you can see 5 into 10 is always equals to 10 into 5, isn't it? So 50 is equals to 50. Okay, here the product is equal. Don't worry, when I come to the exercise, I'll explain this in each and every sum properly. Okay, the ratio will be equal in direct variation. The product will be equal in inverse variation. Am I clear? The ratio will be equal means this by this should be equal to this by this. The product will be equal means this by this is equals to, this into this is equals to this into this. Okay, now if I take an example of x and y, if it is direct variation, then x is directly proportional to y, means this. X is directly proportional to y. X increases, y also increases. X decreases, y also decreases. Okay, but in case of inverse variation, if x increases, then your y decreases, and if x decreases, then y increases. Okay, some sort of things we'll have to learn in this way also when we go to the exercise. Okay, so two types of variations. Basically we should be knowing only three things. There are two types of variation. One is direct, other one is inverse. In direct variation, that is the first thing. The second thing, in direct variation, the ratio is equal. That is, this by this should be equal to this by this. Okay, and the third thing, in indirect variation or in inverse variation, the product will be equal. Am I clear? In direct variation symbolizes this means direct variation, and if you see this type of symbol anywhere, this means your inverse variation. Okay, now there are many exercises. The first exercise is basically all based on direct variation, that is 10A. Exercise 10B is based on inverse variation, and exercise 10C is a mixture of direct and inverse variation. Okay, so today we'll be starting from exercise 10A. So please pause the video and make a note of this. All right, now let us start exercise 10A, question number 1. Exercise 10A is only based on which variation? Direct variation. Exercise 10A is based on direct variation. Okay, the first question says, check or verify whether x and y vary directly or not. X is this value, y is this value. We have to check whether x and y vary directly or not. We know that if x and y vary directly, then their ratios has to be equal. just now what we have learned. Okay, if x varies y with directly, then the ratios has to be equal. Ratios of what? Ratios of x is to y, x is to y, this is to this is this, has to be equal, which means this by this should be equal to this by this. This by this should be equal to this by this. This by this should be equal to this by this. In fact, all this has to be equal. This by this should be equal to this by this, this by this, this by this. Am I clear? Okay. So if x and y vary directly, if x and y are in direct variation, then the ratio has to be equal. Am I clear with this, boys? Ratio means x divided by y. Am I clear? This by this should be equal to this by this. That's what we are going to do out here. We'll check the value of this, we'll check the value of this, we'll check the value of this, we'll check the value of this. If they are equal, then this whole thing is in what variation? Direct variation. Okay, so let us start. So first value I have 3 by 4.5. 3 by 4.5. How can I write? 3 by 45 by 10. Everyone knows 10 goes up in the numerator. I'll get 30 by 45. Please cancel it. It is possible to cancel with 15, isn't it? 15 2s are, 15 3s are. So 2 by 3 is what I got after solving this. Let us check the value of this. Second one, 5 by 7.5, which means 75 by 10, which means 50 by 75, isn't it? Or not? You check yourself. It is possible with 25. 25 2s are, 25 3s are. Again, I am getting 2 by 3. I hope everyone is getting this. Let's go to the third one. That is 8 by 12. 8 by 12 means this one is easy. 4 2s are 8. 4 3s are 12. So again, I am getting 2 by 3. And then the final one, which is 11 by 165. So can I straight away write 110 divided by 165? 165 divided by 10. So that 10 goes up in the numerator, and I'll be getting 110 by 165. I think so it's possible with 11. 11 10s are 110. 11 1s are 11. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 55. 11 5s are 55. Isn't it? Now I think so it's possible with 5. 5 2s are 10. 5 3s are 15. So which will give me 2 by 3. So what do we see out here is the value of this by this is equal to this by this. The value of this by this is equal to this by this. The value of this by this is also is equal to this by this, which means all the ratios are equal. This by this is equal to this by this is equal to this by this is equal to this by this. These are the values. All of them we are getting is 2 by 3, which is also 2 by 3. This is also 2 by 3. This is also 2 by 3. So what does it imply? It implies that x, this implies that x varies with y directly. Okay, so this is how to check whether they vary directly or not. So please pause the video and note it down properly. Alright, I know this video is already very lengthy because today is the first explanation day, okay, of this chapter. Am I clear? It will be lengthy. From tomorrow onwards, it will be very small videos, okay? Today I have to make you clear what is direct and what is inverse variation, right? Okay, so that's why it's lengthy. I move to the next sum quickly. Again, here you have to check whether x and y vary directly or not. So this is the table given to us. You have to check this table whether x and y vary directly or not. If they vary directly, then the ratios are equal. This by this should be equals to this by this should be equal to this by this should be equal to this by this, if they vary directly. Okay, if all these ratios are equal, I can say x vary directly with y. Okay, let us check. 16 by 32. 16 1s are 16 2s are 32. That is 1 by 2. 30 60. 31s are 32s are 60. That is 1 by 2. 40 by 80. 41s are 42s are, that is 1 by 2. All these three values are equal. Let us check the last one. But 56 by 84, 56 by 84 is not 1 by 2. 56 by 84, if you do, you will get 13 by 21. So what does it imply? Since this last value, it is not equal. This equals to this, but not equals to this. So this implies that x does not vary directly. You can simply write down x does not vary directly with y. Okay, x does not vary directly with y. This is question number 1 part 2. So question number 1 part 1 I have done, 1 part 2 I did out here. Your assignment for today will be to do question number 1 part 3 and submit it to me by tomorrow. Do question number 1 part 1, 1 part 2, 1 part 3 and then submit all these 3 sums by tomorrow. Thank you, take care and bye bye.